Rachel. I'm with Moonlight Garden Acupuncture, and I thought that today we can speak a little bit about pulse diagnosis. What is pulse diagnosis, and what is it that your acupuncturist is actually feeling or tapping into when they check your pulses? I know there's a lot of mystification around pulse diagnosis. There are a lot of stories of somebody who they went into their Oriental medicine practitioner and they gave them, a few symptoms of what they would like to work on. And the practitioner will check their pulses. And as they're checking their pulses, they might ask questions that seem very random and like they have nothing to do with the symptoms the patient came in for. And oftentimes, not every time, but oftentimes the answer is, yes, I do also experience some or all of those symptoms that you are questioning me about. And this makes the pulse very mystical. And what are you tapping into? What are you able to see in the pulses? What else can you tell me about my life or my future? Or is this a divination? Are you a psychic? And it is nothing like that. So today I'm going to explain to you a little bit about how we are reading the pulse and what it is that we can actually tell by checking your pulse. I particularly study Zong Fu theory, and therefore I use Zong Fu theory pulse diagnosis. Zong Fu theory is very popular because it is the main theory that can be used for traditional Chinese herbalism. Is based off of Zong Fu theory diagnosis, and therefore I mostly just practice the Zong Fu theory diagnosis mixed in with a little bit of Japanese style and meridian therapy as well. But I do the Zong Fu theory pulse diagnosis. And so I'm going to explain to you a little bit about how I check pulses and what pulses mean to me. Zong Fu theory is, as I had stated, the organ system. So when I check the pulses, I am actually able to tap into all 12 of the organ systems of the body. On the superficial level, we have the Fu organs, which are the yang organs, and at the deeper level of the pulse, so there's 6 on each side. There's 3 places where we check the pulse: the Sun, the Guan, and the Cher position. So we usually use the 3 fingers to check the pulse. And on the superficial level, we're able to check the Fu organs, which are usually organs that hold stuff. So we have the gallbladder, the bladder, the small intestine, the large intestine, the pericardium, the sanjiao, which you might not know about, and the bladder, the gallbladder, and the stomach. And at the deeper level, we are able to check the Zong organs, which are the yin organs. So Zong Fu, with yin and yang organs. So we have 3, and then at the different positions we have 6. Now we're checking 6 organs on each side of on each wrist. On the left side, the left is the more blood side. So the Sun position would be the heart, or its yang pair would be the pericardium. And then the middle Guan position, we are checking the state of the liver, and then at the yang position is the gallbladder. And the last one, the Cher position, is the kidney. In the Zong Fu theory diagnosis, it is the kidney. Sometimes I use the Japanese style, which would make it pericardium, but let's not get into that. And then its yang pair is the bladder. And then on the right side, this is our more qi side. So at the Sun position, the first position, we have the lung, and its yang pair would be the large intestine. The middle position, which is the Guan position, is going to be the spleen is the yin organ, and the stomach is the yang organ. And then the last position, the third position, is Cher, and that is the kidney yang. So it's going to give us the state of the kidney yang, whereas the left was the kidney yin. And once again, at its yang position would be bladder. Sometimes the yang positions are a little bit harder to discern than the yin. So where I'm at in my pulse diagnosis, where I'm at with my being able to do pulse diagnosis is I'm usually finding the imbalance in the yin or yang organ. I have both in my head, and then I'm going to ask questions based off of both of those organs in order to get to a proper diagnosis. I also want to touch on preventative health using pulse diagnosis. This pulse diagnosis is actually what gives acupuncture its amazing ability to, as a preventative health care, we basically keeping the pulses. If the pulses are always smooth and even and everything is balanced, then this is really good health and you're going to age really nicely. But nobody stays that way. There's always something that's going to be a little more excess. There's always one organ that's going to be a little more excess and another organ that is maybe deficient. So the pulses are often going to look like this. So the way I feel them, it might be like this, and then this one's very weak, and then this one's a little excess, and then maybe these ones are a little smooth, and maybe this one's a little excess. So what I am doing is, without even asking too much about the symptoms, or maybe the symptoms don't even really need to be there, the first thing I do is I check the pulse and I pick specific points based off what I found in the pulse in order to balance the system. And a lot of times people have went to Oriental medicine practitioners and they're like, well, I went and either it helped or it didn't help with what I had went in for. But all these other symptoms just disappeared. Symptoms I didn't even tell them about. This weird rash I had forever is gone now. And that is part of what we're doing, is when you get a really good root system, you are balancing this. You're balancing the pulses and you're balancing the system, and this will create an environment for your body to just have clear health and start healing all of its own ailments without even being particular about that. I hope that this gave you a good idea of what we are doing when we do pulse diagnosis when you come into for acupuncture or for Oriental herbs or Chinese medicine herbs. And I'm going to ask you to maybe even go ahead and check your own pulses every now and then. You may not be a pulse diagnosis master in the future, but you can start practicing by checking your own pulse. And one way that you can do this to see if food is good for you is actually by checking your pulse, feeling, is it hard, is it slow, is it deep, do I have to push far in order to feel it, or is it kind of bounding and I barely have to lay my fingers there and I can feel it bounding. But one thing that you can start with is checking the rate. Take the rate of your pulse, and then you can check for food sensitivities by eating a food that you think you might or might not be sensitive to. We actually did this in nutrition class where we all had to bring food that we thought was good for us. Then we would go around and check each other's pulses, and sometimes we would find that a food that we thought was really good for us really wasn't, based on our pulses. But for a beginner, you can check the rate of your pulse, and if you have a food sensitivity to that certain food, then when it touches your tongue, your heart rate is going to go into overdrive a little bit and your pulse rate is going to increase. So if your pulse rate increases by 3 or more beats per minute, then you might have a food sensitivity to that food. Try it out. Let me know.